Before we start, I'd like to acknowledge that we are gathered here on the lands of the Kaurna people and pay respects to elders past and present, and extend that acknowledgement to any First Nations people who are joining us in the room as well. Really excited to be having this chat with Yasemin today. It's been really brilliant having you here for the past 6 months with the Mahmood Martin Foundation sponsored studio. So Yasemin is a multidisciplinary creative with a Turkish background who works as a writer, director, actress, artist and comedian. Yasemin aims to create stories that uplift, engage and promote diversity in innovative ways. Her work explores ideas of belonging, identity, liminality, spirituality, the environment, race, health and being other. We're just going to have like a pretty casual chat, so I will leave some time at the end for questions, but are you comfortable with taking questions as we go through? Yeah, so just put your hand up, because we're just a small group and yeah, that's lovely, it makes it a bit more intimate. Yeah. So I've just got a few questions and then mostly you'll be hearing from Yasemin. You're quite an accomplished creative and yeah, working across all of those different fields that I mentioned. So I wanted to start with having you chat through a little bit your interest in art and how you came to it and how you've approached that through your career in all of these different fields. But also acknowledging that the exhibition explores some of the trickier aspects of navigating a creative career through chronic illness and late diagnosis. And so yeah, wanted to know about how you got to where you are now.
Thank you. Yeah, well, it's not a typical line of, I like art and then I'm going to do it. Being Turkish and having kind of strict parents, they were like, oh, you're good at art, but the real world doesn't work like that. So I went to law school and nearly died in a car crash and went, oh, I can't like keep living a lie. So I couldn't go straight to do visual art, so I went and did a film and theatre degree at Flinders and just was doing, I guess, more experimental video and theatre kind of stuff, and I always loved performing, and yeah, I guess I just started committing hard to it, because if I hadn't had that near-death experience, I don't think it would have pushed me on the path as much. Like I would have been like, oh, I'll do art part-time, but so I finished a degree at Flinders, and then I wasn't quite happy with just being a film and theatre person, so I went and I did freelance work in photography and video, but then I went to Central School of Art briefly, but it wasn't quite for me because I'm not a realist. I love that sort of technique, but then I did a uni essay honours, and September 11 had really affected me being Muslim, so I wanted to do an honours piece about like the representation of women post September 11 through Western eyes, like how the world views Muslim women. And yeah, just since then, I guess I've just sort of been meandering into different directions, because also by my chronic illness, I didn't really know what was going on until maybe I was 21, and they said I had chronic fatigue and glandular fever. And yeah, it was a bit scary because no one back then knew anything about it, and they were like, well, it's either in your head or you're being hysterical. And then I guess I had to adapt my work to my energy levels and finances, because you know, it does cost money to make art with studios and equipment and everything else. So I guess I was, just wanted to bring voice to what I was going through, and very grateful for the Midsummer Pathways grant in 2020, because that was when I realised from various people that I was disabled, and I'd sort of been like gaslighting myself, because I got diagnosed with endometriosis and adenomyosis and ADHD like in my mid to late 30s. So it was just like, whoa, you know, there was something wrong with me. It wasn't just in my head. So yeah, like after that I was like, I want to raise awareness about disability and chronic illness and mental health stuff, because I didn't want people to have to suffer as long as I did. So yeah, I guess that's a very long way of my process.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to hear about. And Midsummer Pathways, that was a program where you received some mentorship as well, is that right?
Yeah, and it was right during COVID, so it was like a lifesaver, because we had Zoom calls with different mentors and workshops, and we had like a disabled cohort, And it was just really nice to hear other perspectives and have a group where we could talk about stuff and be like, oh, I feel the same way, and disability can look different and it can be dynamic and it can be the social model, and yeah, I was like, oh wow. I learned a lot and felt like less alone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Cool, thank you for sharing. So the exhibition that you have developed over this time as a studio resident is called Alchemical, which I think is a really powerful name. I'll just read a little bit from your artist statement. This exhibition explores the transformative power of chronic illness and how it can alchemize you into something unexpected, new and uncharted. So I just wondered if you could speak a little bit about that process and I guess why that was something that you wanted to focus on in this exhibition and the ways that you've done that.
Yeah, as you know, I sort of had a different angle when I first approached, but then I was like sitting with my therapist, and I guess, you know, I wanted to have disability and chronic illness seen through a different lens, and that, yeah, it can be an alchemical process. It doesn't always have to be a terrible thing, even though it can be terrible. And I really liked the Japanese, I guess, pottery you can have with the broken bits pieced together with gold, and I kind of felt a bit like that, like I'd been broken, but I'd been brought together different and interesting, and I kind of wanted to explore that in my works, both in the video and sculptural and painting stuff, and based on that principle, like some of my works are older pieces that I remodeled and have changed, like pre-diagnosis and post-diagnosis, so I wanted to sort of do it on that Japanese model of, well, it's a little bit broken, but I'll fix it.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so I wondered next if you could speak a little bit about the video works. Again, taking some of the old and bringing in some of the new, and just talk through those. You can see some of the photographs that were taken at the same time that you were making one of the videos. So
Yeah, so you don't really get to see much green screen in it, but I wanted to show the green screen of, I guess, being unmasked and unfiltered. But in that piece, which is called Grin and Bear It, it's, I guess, it was made pre-diagnosis, so I didn't know I had ADHD, even though I tried many times to get a diagnosis. And I didn't know I had endo, even though I had every single symptom, and you need to have surgery to get a diagnosis, and I wasn't well enough, and also it costs money, and they were like, there's no way you have endo. So I just was like, okay then. But yeah, that piece, I guess, is a little bit confrontational and weird. It's sort of like a makeup video gone wrong with like putting on the fake happy smile, and I was going through a very rough time, and you know, it just felt like if I told people what was really going on, they'd just be like, whoa, that's intense. So a lot of the time I was just like, yeah, I'm all right, or especially back then there was a lot more stigma, because that was around 2009, and you couldn't really tell people you were chronically ill or disabled without it really affecting your career, especially in the film and television industry. And the second piece is, I guess, I've been doing selfies since before there were selfies. Like I didn't really get to see much people like me on screen, so when I studied photography in high school, back before there was social media and stuff, I was taking a lot of self-portraits. So that one is a sort of a weird play on self-portraiture, but with digital glitches, which are from in-camera, like mini DV, so playing with the fast forward and rewind and trying to get through time in that piece. So that one's like a reinterpretation of, I guess, where I'm at now, which is feeling a little bit glitchy, but trying to control where I am in time, and playing with the brokenness I feel sometimes.
And these works are so visceral and tactile as well. I think there's really nice connection between, you know, that mask that's slipping off and then some of the tactile elements that you've brought in here. I'm going a bit off script here as well, but one of the things that we did talk about while we were installing was that you know, these works have you in it as the central part of the subject, but the works down here are much more abstract. So are you able to talk a little bit about how you conceive the connection between the two bodies.
Yeah.
Not bodies of work, but two parts of the body of work.
100%. The body of work being a good pun too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess this is more my external world, and this is more the internal world of, I guess, what I had to endure and transmute to sort of be functional or go to appointments or get a diagnosis, or even how it felt like these pieces sort of feel like I have a bit of synesthesia, so some of the pieces are also explorations of, I guess, different feelings or visuals I get when I meditate, or yeah, I do have a sort of degenerative eye condition as well, so I do sometimes see like a lot of spots, so I kind of wanted to turn that into art. Yeah. And yeah, I'm really into the micro and the macro worlds of, I guess, germs and blood as well, which is sort of can be in there, but also the cosmos with the stars, and also the geology of the earth, which I will return to once I pass away. So it's sort of, yeah, trying to reclaim my place in the world and the universe. How fleeting it will be.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to have that, I guess, the connection between your inner self and your outer self, and to be able to think of these as all part of the same sort of thing.
Totally.
My next question is about process, and at the mill we're always interested in hearing from artists about their process. I think sometimes that can be a thing that happens in the studios and audiences don't always get to see, so to be able to have a chance to hear from an artist talking about how they got to where they got to with their artworks. It'd be great to hear you talk through a few of the processes that you've used. Maybe it's good to start with these ones.
Yeah. Well, they were old paintings, and I started with that one because, I don't know, I've had long COVID also through this whole process, and it's delayed like a lot of the start of my residency. I was quite sick and unable to work, and I guess I was feeling a bit of anger, and I had a scissor, and I was sort of just, because I do a lot of improvisation in my works, I was kind of just exploring the texture with the scissor, and something was like, just poke a hole in it, you don't even like this painting. And then I just kept poking holes intuitively, and then I was just staring at it going, oh, you know, how can I play with a canvas in a different way that's not a traditional exploration? And I kind of just imagined things coming out of it, because I do like horror and sci-fi, and sometimes I do feel like my body is a horror show, so I kind of wanted to have something pretty yet gritty, and I wanted to do a colourful version through experimentation to see. But I've never done a piece like this. I have done like clay and other works, but I guess I liked the meditative process of doing the paper.
Yeah, I really love them as objects. I think there's something bodily and abject about them, the sort of tenderly fingers that are coming out of the wall. But then there's like relationship between these and the other works in the gallery, where there's that repetition of form, and then because they're sculptural as well, you get these beautiful shadows that are coming behind them. So yeah, I can imagine, you know, a landscape en masse where there were all of these sort of tendrils coming out that you could just like fall into and
that would be
touched. I don't know if that's nice or gross.
I don't know. I kind of like it. I don't know why. It kind of reminds me of a weird anime or manga. But even like even Takari's work, previous resident to me, like I really like sculptural fabrics and reclaiming, I guess, sewing and craft-based practices that aren't often, because they're women's work or whatever. Like, but I would love to experiment with these further in different forms. So I'm very grateful that I had the mill to just go. I could do comfortable works like my opal works, which I love to do, but I wanted to push myself in a different direction with this residency. Yeah, and they are, you know, experimental and using. I love that you have taken older canvases and repurposed them for this exhibition. I think sometimes there's this push for that always new, whatever, but new or innovative or interesting doesn't always have to mean that you start with brand new materials. 100%.
Actually, often with a solo exhibition, you're looking back at things that you have previously done to make this new space for yourself, and that's what you have alchemized in this exhibition.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's kind of like what I was touching on about this is the only body I've got, so I've got to work with it. So it's sort of like, well, I don't want to just shun these pieces. Like, I want to give them a second chance. And it didn't always work. There was a lot of pieces that didn't make it, and they were good, but they just didn't quite fit together.
Yeah, great. So maybe you touched on the opal works. Can you speak a little bit more about what that process is like for you? It's something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
What kind of state of mind you put yourself into to make a work like that?
Yeah, I guess because of my cultural heritage, like my family, my grandma and my granddad were like craftspeople, amongst being like a housewife and also in the army. And I guess I would see them doing like very repetitious kind of work, like with china and other stuff. He was a carpenter, so I guess I wanted to do works that were meditative when I was very sick and unwell and just, I guess, unable to move. And I love geology and gemstones and archaeology, so I wanted to do, works that are sort of almost like blood work, but also geology and archaeology and the timelessness of space. And yeah, like the second one on the right is almost like a Stargate portal type webbing, because it's really interesting. If you look at the stars, they're like mycelium structures, which are, I guess, the largest organism on Earth, which is like the mushroom network, and our brains are very similar. So I wanted to sort of, try to work through representations of neurology and biology in different ways and cute ways, because I love opals. I don't know.
Yeah, they have very intricate details in those paintings as well. If you haven't looked closely, like, do spend some time with them. It must be hours and hours and hours of work layering all of them up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Then moving further back into the gallery, the next group along has this built-up texture. And you're using very similar tones and colours as in the opal paintings, but in this like other and different way. So can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, how you're echoing the structures in the other paintings, but using texture in a different way?
Yeah. I guess like I am really interested in mycelium and neural networks. But also like fat cells. I had a look at my surgical photos from my endo stuff, and I was like, oh, and I kind of wanted to transmute, I guess, that and turn it into gold, kind of like that Japanese process I was talking about. So you saw the paintings before I added the gold. They looked a bit like really sci-fi and see-through and gross, like the golden bits, because I guess I used like a different type of bonding agent, and I just wanted to sort of represent, I guess, how alien it can feel in my body, but also earthy, and the meditative states I've sort of had to reach to be at peace in my body and what I've gone through.
You built that texture up using a bonding agent and then painted the gold over. Yeah, there was this bit in the studio where the gold wasn't on it, and I was like attracted but also repulsed.
Which is good.
Yeah. I think it's the right feeling.
100%.
But then the addition of gold really brings the appealing more to the surface, I think. But if you get really close and look at that texture, like, it still is quite grotesque and abject and body-y.
Definitely. Yeah, like I used to read Stephen King's as a kid, and I think it sort of seeped its way in, even amongst the prettier kind of works.
Yeah, cool. The next grouping of work are those really, really textured two canvases, the sun and the rainbow. Yeah. How did you achieve the texture on those ones?
Well, funnily, I had, because bonding agent and gel medium and stuff like that can be a bit expensive, but I had some white paint that was getting old, and I realised it was very viscous, so I kind of was giving myself permission to play, and I guess, the chakra system is sort of influenced by the sun, because they say chakras are like different suns in your body, and I was meditating a lot at the time when I was doing that one, and I just wanted to have a light at the end of the tunnel, which kind of coincides funnily with the void one on the other side, when I felt like I couldn't get out of the void, and I never knew that I would get out of that dark night of the soul. And the rainbow, I guess, is like the similar textures, but yeah, that one took forever because it's so layered.
Yeah, it's very thick, that texture. And then you've got the small rainbow one on the other side as well, which is it's quite a light, beautiful. Yeah. That's the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, definitely more chirpier than the other ones. Yeah.
And then, as you say, opposite to the void, the void of existential dread.
Yes, yeah, because when you're in bed and you can't do anything and you need money, and you know, people think you're making things up, or you know, like people don't get it, or your friends fall away, you're stuck in this kind of void of, am I ever going to get better? And the weirdest thing and most intense thing my therapist at the time said was like, what if you never get better? Like, what are you going to do then? And this is as good as it gets. And then I was like, oh shit, like, how am I going to create a life worth living with what I've got? And yeah, I've really committed to my health, and not that it really cured anything, but it just made it more livable. And yeah, so I guess that existential void is quite dark, but then it's got the nice halos of potential hope.
When you look into that that painting, it has all of the same colours that you've got in your other paintings. They're just, you have to find them.
Yeah. And the process video of that is underneath it all is fluoro colours and bright and I just kept layering up the darkness, and I don't know, it ended up that direction, but it was like so bright before, it was almost like childishly bright, which is great, but I just was like, whoa.
And then the final two works, I guess we better talk about them because we talked about everything else. That they are, again, they're just works that are building on the techniques that you've used throughout the gallery. But the furthest one, does have slightly different tones of colour in it as well. Do you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, I guess that was that came before those pieces, so it was sort of that neural network, and I love overhead aerial photography and being on a plane, so that's sort of almost like flying over a city or the neural networks, but because it's more straight lines and more, it just felt a bit more like, my mind being a bit more powerful or something in that one, and influenced by earth tones and also the land and the ochre that you see.
Yeah, fantastic. Cool.
Yeah.
I think that's the end of my questions, so maybe a chance for you guys to ask any questions of Yasemin if you have them.
Yasemin, thanks for sharing all that. It's
Thank you.
very hard to bring all that information out about your unhealthiness, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
I was interested to know, you talked about these as being very internal and these are what you put to the world. Which works came first?
Because I'm so ADHD, I'm sometimes working on a few pieces at once. I guess trying to think, because these are some of the older pieces that I've touched up were probably like almost 2009. Yeah, and I think that was 2009, the first video piece. So I think they both were around the same time. But I think, the orange one was the first one, and then the opal one on the left was the second painting, and the video. And this concept I'd sort of been toying with for a while because I got an arts essay grant at the time, and I wanted to sort of do it right and get a proper face cast, but it just took so long, and I decided to just use the face mask myself, and
I think that was very successful.
Thank you.
It's interesting whether you, just the textural nature of these works, whether they sort of fed information, perhaps subconsciously, to make these other works.
Like I am a very tactile person, and I love working with my hands, but I guess I've always wanted to do more sculptural based works, but I have no formal training, and I've done a pottery class, but I've never, I'd love to do more installation based works and maybe collaborate with people who are way more talented and skilled than me in that department, and yeah, collaborate. Yeah, thank you for that question.
Did anyone have anything else that we can touch on? No?
Yeah.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to chat through?
No, I'm just very grateful for the residency and yeah, the outcome of an exhibition, because I was having such a tough time with COVID and losing my mind and getting all these new symptoms I'd never had, and I still have some of them, and it was just nice to have a work that I could, like, I thought I was just going to be doing work about chronic illness, but some of these pieces are also like the chronic long COVID vibes as well. So
Yeah.
it was nice to sort of have an anchor and not lose my footing in that COVID hellscape that I was experiencing.
Yeah, no, I think you've done an incredible job of finding what you can make work within what you have been going through, and for it to be meaningful and authentic for you as well.
Yeah.
I think that's really strong. And yeah, it looks fantastic in the gallery.
Thank you.
So glad to be able to share it with all of you as well. Yeah, and for you to be so generous in sharing the conversation about it too.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the questions, and yeah, and also everyone at the mill is so delightful. So it's just been nice to not be so isolated, like, and to have a space where I can work from, and that's also been healing. So yeah.
Community.